even if you use only two main ingredients like maize and soybeans, they still have different mycotoxins. And this is the big problem because you have a mixture of mycotoxins. It's expected that 80% of more from the pig diet has more than 2 mycotoxins itself. And by experience, we always count the mycotoxin, their metabolites, and usually have 5-6 mycotoxins per diet. And when you go to the European conditions where we have not only soybeans and maize, but you have also barley and other feed ingredients, then you have a mixture of other mycotoxins. So a free diet is impossible. What we can do is try to prevent their production in the field, to prevent their production during storage, and to prevent exposure either by binding them or deactivating them in the animal.
Welcome to the Swine Nutrition Blackbelt Podcast, where we explore the science behind swine nutrition. I'm your host, Jorge Estrada, and today in our podcast we have Dr. Regiane Santos, who is a researcher and innovation coordinator at SFR in the Netherlands. We will be discussing mycotoxins from field to feed. Dr. Santos, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for this nice introduction. Welcome everybody for the podcast. So as you well introduced, my Regiane Santos. I'm originally from Brazil. There in Brazil, I made my bachelor and I became veterinarian. And I did also my master. And in that time, I also did my PhD on reproduction for farm animals. In between, I came to the Netherlands in, I think, 2004 or something like that. And then I started a second PhD in the biology of reproductive cells. And when I finished the PhD, I just gave a big shift in my profession. So I started my postdoc in toxicology with special attention mycotoxins and the effect of mycotoxins on animal reproduction, again on farm animals. And later on, I started working with the nutrition and the intestinal health of farm animals related to mycotoxin infection. So I had 7 nice years in my postdoc at Utrecht University in the Netherlands, until the day that I decided, okay, now I want to talk directly to the farmer and to the nutritionist, to veterinarians. I want to hear their questions because I was 7 years hearing the questions of my colleagues, of researchers and other postdocs. And it was a good decision. So since 2015, I'm a senior researcher at SFR. And last year, I became the innovation coordinator. So this means, we are doing a lot of really nice trials with mycotoxins, with naturally contaminated material, with realistic levels of contamination, checking the performance of animals, including pigs. And together with all of that, I have been editing a book that is just last week, fresh from the oven, that I can show here. It's Mycotoxins from Field to Feed. And this book has 19 chapters. So we give a journal for mycotoxins production since the field until the effects in several animal species, so poultry, pigs, cattle, but also fish, horses, and pets. And we try to find pragmatical ways to give the diets to the animals to decrease the exposure, but also being sustainable and efficient with the diet. So it's a nice book for those who want to understand more about mycotoxins. And I hope that today I can summarize a little bit about this book with our conversation.
Excellent. No, I appreciate that, you sharing that information with us. And certainly this is a very interesting topic. It doesn't, it's all, we have the challenge all the time. So mycotoxins, the hidden enemy, right? So let's start discussing probably something that is always in our minds is, okay, can mycotoxins be prevented, right? Is it possible to produce mycotoxin-free diets?
No, we can prevent a huge contamination. We can prevent a huge exposure, but you cannot prevent totally because any feedstuff is contaminated. So when you think about the animal diet, even if you use only two main ingredients like maize and soybeans, they still have different mycotoxins. And this is a big problem because you have a mixture of mycotoxins. It's expected that 80% of more from the pig diet has more than 2 mycotoxins itself. And by experience, we always count the mycotoxin, their metabolites, and usually have 5-6 mycotoxins per diet. And when you go to the European conditions where we have not only soybeans and maize, but you have also barley and other feed ingredients, then you have a mixture of other mycotoxins. So a free diet is impossible. What we can do is try to prevent their production in the field, to prevent their production during storage, and to prevent exposure either by binding them or deactivating them in the animal.
Okay, so, and I guess one of the challenges, of course, is in order to understand, the amount of mycotoxins that are in feed, right? I mean, in a general sense, why is such a challenge to measure mycotoxin contamination?
Yeah, they are not well distributed. So, for example, if you take grains to analyze the protein levels, they are really homogeneously distributed. So you can take any sample and you can say the nutrient levels, the levels of crude protein or other nutrients. For mycotoxins, you have some hotspots. So sometimes you can have one kernel with 5 ppm produced mycotoxin and another one with 1 and another one. So it's very difficult to measure. We have a big risk to reject a good batch because you take the wrong sample that is highly contaminated, or to accept a bad batch because you just sampled the material that was not highly contaminated. So the sampling moment is very important to really have different spots of sampling to be sure that you have at least an average of contamination.
Okay, and then from the technology standpoint, or the analysis that are available out there, is there any new technologies that are improving the diagnostics of the amount of mycotoxins in feed, and is it easier or harder than before? I guess that's my question.
If the sampling is well performed, there are several methods to analyze. Of course, some of them are more expensive than others. Some are more fast methods that you can do in the feed mill before preparing the diet when you are receiving from the conveys. And there are other methods that takes more days in the laboratory. So for analysis and for the detection, we are really advanced. And it's not only to the big 5-6 mycotoxins that everybody knows, but also the metabolites, also the so-called emerging mycotoxins. They can be well measured. So the methods of analysis, there are plenty of them, and they speed of results, let's say like this. How fast you can receive the results also depends on the method you choose, but they are there.
Fortiva is moving beyond feed additives to create foundational ingredients that work with your pig's physiology to support resilience and health. With proven technologies like Ambatine, Flow Matrix, and Endura, Fortiva helps you address the toughest challenges in swine production. From gut health to growth performance, together we can make animals more resilient in the face of future challenges. Learn how at FortivaImpact.com.
And again, part of the challenge that we have with mycotoxins, of course, fungus and mold in the field, as you have mentioned before. So, but of course, with this challenge, it comes along with the changes in potential weather, potential climate. I mean, what's the relationship between climate and mycotoxins?
Yeah, I could say there is a big relationship, and especially with climate change. And it's not only the climate, but also the transport of these materials, because we have globalization, so you have the transport of several feedstuffs. And when you transport the feedstuffs that are contaminated with these fungi species, they are transporting out these species. The big problem now is that, for example, you have some mycotoxins that are more produced in the hot and dry areas, and others in more, for example, aflatoxins. Others in more temperate areas. Other mycotoxins are more in mild, with mild temperature, more wet, like deoxynivalenol. But the problem is that with climate change, the weather changes is really more, we have abrupt change in the weather. So we have sometimes really dry periods followed by really strong period of rain and then dry again. And this helps the production the growth of these fungi species. And the second point is that the fungi species producing mycotoxins, they are more resilient to climate change. So they are growing more and they are more able to produce mycotoxins. And I can give you, for example, an example of in Italy for that the temperature is increasing the last years, and aflatoxins we could see more and could find more in African countries or in South America, but we can see already detect aflatoxins in Italy. Deoxynivalenol, if you go to Northern Europe, it was not found in such high levels. But with the climate change, the temperature is getting more mild, so the production of deoxynivalenol is increasing. There is another mycotoxin that people don't talk so much. That is the called emerging mycotoxin. That's eniantin. That's really important for pigs. That we have been making some trials with this mycotoxin. Like 5-6 years ago, if I analyze diets, I always could find them, but the levels were maximum 50 microgram per kilo. In the last 2-3 years, I can find 5 milligrams per kilo. So it's really a huge increase in the contamination. Of course, last year we did not have this outbreak of eniantins, but this year we have already an outbreak of DON. So when you don't have an outbreak of one type of mycotoxin, you have the risk of the outbreak of another mycotoxin. And everything is correlated to weather change, but also even more with climate change.
Definitely a fascinating topic, Dr. Santos. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have today. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. Santos.
Thank you, Alce, and see you next time.
Alrighty, everyone, thanks for listening to the Swine Nutrition Blackbelt Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us some comments. Join us in our next episode.